Greetings one and all, and a very, very warm welcome to Reality Decoded, something I haven't said for quite some time, and as you may be able to pick up in the background, if you are hearing me loud and clearly, is a little bit of noise pollution. So welcome to this R.D.R.R. Tonight's stream is Thought Control. Some of you old-time regular offenders may have already seen that, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to refresh the memory. So let's get rid of the thumbnail and welcome you in a glorious black and white, and hopefully you can hear me okay. I am just going to go and shut the window because all of a sudden there does seem to be an awful lot of noise interference as a bunch of kids are playing football, a couple of dogs are chasing each other around. It is that time of night, people have had their supper or dinner, whatever you like to call it. Come out and enjoy the last sort of embers of daylight before the moon does rise. And it looks as though, I don't know if you can see out the window, probably not. There is a moon, a full looking moon rising, and I am back to streaming on my good old cellular device, my phone. As some of you may be aware, my streaming endeavors have been taking place primarily over at the Shit Show with my wonderful co-host Sweet Cheeks L78, where we have been running operations over there for around about 4.5 coming on 5 months, and I have neglected Reality Decoded somewhat in those 5 months. Prior to that, I did attempt to relaunch this channel for probably the second, possibly the third time since I did leave Toronto, with limited success. But already this evening, 10 viewers were watching the intro. It says we've got 9 at the moment, so maybe someone just popped out to the bathroom, but we are gonna be doing or be looking at a stream that I did put up a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 years ago in this channel's infancy, Thought Control, where we will be looking at some good old devices that will be able to influence your mind, thoughts and behavioral patterns one way or another, and this will sort of fall in conjunction with Frequency Friday that is running over on the Shit Show. If or not we bring you a Frequency Friday tomorrow, that is to be determined, but it is an ongoing stream, and as this was sort of somewhat relevant, I decided in the planning of Frequency Friday, trying to make it sort of a multi-channeled event. Hopefully we'll be putting some content out here at Reality Decoded. Most of it will be going out on the Shit Show, and I'm sure Sweet Cheeks over on her channel L78 will be also providing you with some frequency based content that will be running in conjunction with that shit video production special event Frequency Friday. So let me see what regular offenders I do have watching. Laurie, you are one of the old school regular offenders, one of my former Canuckistanians, whatever is going up and on up there in Canada. I'm sure as how glad I got out when I did, as it seems to have been taking a turn for the worse after turn for the worst after turn for the worst in the almost 2 years I've been leaving. We've also got Brian, Griffin, Tranquil Vortex, Quantum Epic, great to see you. Why man, Paul from Newcastle. I hope you enjoyed that little London weekend television intro that I do tend to start these proceedings with a little bit of nostalgia for those of you across the pond, and some of you, I was just about to say thank you Brian, almost reading my mind. Some of you may have caught this afternoon some brand new content on this channel. It's not all about the reruns at the moment. I did bring you a Crisis Actor special 45-minute premiere event, which is still available for those of you who didn't catch it live this afternoon. I thought, seeing as we had quite a few people watching that towards the end of that stream, you lucky regular offenders will get a Reality Decoded rerun this evening, which you are now watching. And I had planned to sort of show this a few weeks ago, almost a couple of months, but I'm pretty sure some of you are aware of the events that sort of took place at the beginning of May that sort of took a couple of weeks out of scheduling and out of normality, and sort of put the Frequency Friday event back, I think 4 weeks in total. So this has been sort of around, and partly why I did want to stream it is sort of to get rid of it, get it out of the way, and try and concentrate on some more new content to bring to you on this channel. And I do have a very, very special, I'm not going to tell you, stick around till the end, stream planned that hopefully I will be bringing you on this channel in the next few days or weeks. But stay tuned, and I might give you a little teaser later as to what that is. But for those of you who don't know the proceedings here, although I'm pretty sure some of you do, the way we do things, the way I do things here at Reality Decoded is I tend to pre-record my feature presentations for my live streams, because streaming off of my phone doesn't give me the ability to share the screen, as is the case when I use the laptop and we stream on StreamYards over at the shit show. So sort of in a way to kind of facsimile that, I used to screen record all the articles that I wanted to sort of bring you in this presentation of interest, as well as some videos and other information related to the topic at choice, and put that together for your entertainment, educational and informative purposes. But Brian, I didn't get to finish your comment, but I liked the Crisis Actor video I was watching, and then I saw that you were going live, as the other videos chat said you were going live later. Wow, look at that, synchronicities working overtime, fighting crime. Or are they fighting crime or perpetuating crime, or even putting the ideas in the minds of individuals to go out and carry out crimes? But as I was saying, we do sort of pre-record things here at Reality Decoded, which is something we have incorporated over at the shit show. You may be aware that in the last sort of few weeks we have the pre-show premiere pre-rec, the PPP, and we have put a few pre-recs together in the past, but I think the way to go over at the shit show is to sort of play it as an extended intro prior to SNL or whatever stream you may be watching, providing a little bit of relevant information and teasers as to what's to come in the live stream. But this isn't the shit show, it is Reality Decoded, my second channel, and this evening's pre-recorded feature presentation that is a rerun does actually contain some footage from my first channel, TSP TV, formerly known as the Thrift Store Prepper, but that was quite a mouthful. So welcome, Guy, I see you just snuck in. And Laurie, to answer your question, you're probably one of the very, very few folks in the chat at the moment who will be aware and around at the time of the original Gusset Girls. And for those of you who are unaware of what a Gusset Girl is, in my early days of live streaming, it always got to the point where I was about to wrap things up. You know, okay guys, it's been a great show, time to wrap things up, just say a few goodbyes and final thoughts. And lo and behold, always somebody would arrive, usually a female, and hey guys, sorry I'm late, what did I miss? And usually sort of out of politeness and maybe naivety at the time, I would sort of go on for an extra 20, maybe 30 minutes just to incorporate the late a regular offender, or the Gusset Girl as we used to refer to them. And the Gusset Girls were a very, very frequent and prominent part of the fixtures, both at TSP TV and here at Reality Decoded, and we will wait to see if or not this scream gets a Gusset Girl. But it's always like, hey everyone, I'm here, look at me, what did I miss? Oh, I was sleeping and I had to put the shopping away, and oh, terrible things have been going on, but what did I miss? I'm here now, everybody look at me, I'm here, everybody now, look at me. But those were the good old days, and memories. It's almost been 5 years actually that I've been streaming. But anyway guys, Gusset Girls aside, let's get this evening's feature presentation and dive straight into it before I forget what it is all about. So I will be coming and joining you in the chat, turning off my mic, and I will be taking off my hat because it is a little bit warm and sticky here, especially now I have shut the window. show. So anyway, guys, sit back, relax. I would say enjoy, but probably not the most enjoyable thing you could have chosen to watch this Thursday evening, the 1st of June, I believe it is, on the Gregorian, as my co-host at the Shit Show would inform you at the opening of our streams. But as I said, guys, this is this evening's feature presentation. It was recorded and shown on this channel a couple of years ago. It even contains some content from even longer back from TSP TV. So I'll be chilling with you in the chat, and we will be coming and hanging out live again once the feature presentation is over. So hope you learned something, guys. As I said, this channel is entertainment, although this isn't exactly very entertainment or enjoyable content, but hopefully it is informative and it will be educational for those of you who are aware.
Highly secretive Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, or DARPA, is developing tools to read the brain on a level 10,000 times more detailed than current technology allows. How hard is the military angle or the military application as far as a rule for DARPA projects?
It's required. I mean, yeah, that's what DARPA is about, right? And so we're about the warfighter and making sure that we don't have any sort of military surprise. So we're out there looking at some of the most revolutionary technologies to make sure that we understand what they are, how they're going to work, what would be militarily relevance, and having folks and labs in the United States that are well versed in building these technologies is all good for the military.
Do you foresee a manner in which kind of the work you're doing could be used to enhance human thought, or I guess more of a supplement than a medicine?
Enhancement is not necessarily a bad thing if we could improve behavior, but we certainly don't want these kinds of interventions to be abused. However, if it can be abused, that means it's effective.
Right.
So that's a problem I'm happy to help fight when it presents itself.
To me, the BCI opportunities for the future are huge.
Yeah.
I really see it as a disruptive technology, but we need to do it very ethically, right, legally, and make sure we understand the social implications of this.
Because you can do a lot of damage in there.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Thought Control, and hopefully you have taken your protein pills and put your helmet/headphones on for this latest installment of Reality Decoded, brought to you from Shit Video Productions. And this evening we are going to be looking at some topics that should be familiar to some of the more attentive regular offenders here at the Thrift Store Studio, but it is also very important in recent light of the announcement of what is being referred to as the Havana Syndrome, and very similarly to the deep state's alien agenda. All of a sudden we are seeing government and agencies acknowledging the fact that directed energy weapons and electromagnetic radio frequency technology that can alter and disrupt behavioral and mind patterns does exist. And since Havana Syndrome was uploaded on Reality Decoded, very pure return in views. However, the government has signed off a bill in the United States to offer relief to any individuals that are suffering of symptoms as a result of what is being called Havana Syndrome, which is being used to describe victims of electromagnetic radio frequency directed energy weaponry attacks. So without any further ado, guys, thanks for tuning in again. Let's start off with an article, and we do have some videos and maybe one or two articles to get through, although one of the articles is a little bit long, but we will
try to sort of fast track as much as we can. And as I said, some of this stuff should be a little bit familiar to some of the regular offenders. And you can kind of see there we've got a couple of individuals that look as though they've had far too much junk food in Frankenfood diets, watching a variety of screens that are designed to hypnotize you and draw you into a trance-like state. The foods, the drugs, the stimulants, all these things that we're being pumped into our body, chemically enhanced flavorings and genetically modified food colorings, HEK2121293 possibly, is the ingredients that will kind of dissolve the mind a little bit into becoming a sponge for saturation of subliminal and suggestive messaging that comes to you in a vast variety of formats, not just entertainment, music, mainstream media, but social media. And now in a smart age, even things like billboards are containing smart technology that can emit frequencies. It is all about the frequencies, guys, and is your mind, is your or my mind even the mind of ourselves, or are they the minds of programmers we've not seen? So the first part of this little article that we are going to look at is a quote from Robert Bernays: "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. And those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, a shadow government, a deep state, hidden group of Kabbalist elites, which is the true ruling power of not only the country of the United States, but of the globe. And we are governed. Our minds are molded, our tastes are formed, and our ideas are suggested largely by men we have never heard of." Edward Bernays, not Robert Bernays. My apologies there. And another quote from a CBS former foreign correspondent: "Politicians and the media have conspired to infantilize, to dumb down the American and global public. At heart, politicians don't believe that Americans can handle complex truth, and the news media, especially television news, basically agrees. And there is a reason it is called television programming." But the article starts off with saying that mind control is also known as brainwashing, which refers to a process in which a group or an individual systematically uses unethically manipulative methods to persuade others to conform to the wishes of the manipulators, and often to the detriment of the person being manipulated. The term has been applied to any tactic, psychological or otherwise, which can be seen as subverting an individual's sense of control over their own thinking, behavior, emotions, and decision making. Theories of brainwashing and mind control were originally developed to explain how totalitarian regimes appeared to succeed in systematically indoctrinating prisoners of war through propaganda and torture techniques. Mind control is done in several ways, such as via propaganda through the controlled media, be it mainstream or in this day and age social, and also trauma-based mind control and frequencies. Ladies and gentlemen, this shit is all attacking us right now. They have created an environment in which is a little bit stressful, uncertain, depressing. It is inducing anxiety, all sorts of thoughts for people who are sort of affected and maybe non-essential and struggling to pay bills, wondering wondering where the next dollar's coming from, and wondering if they're ever going to get a job again, if or not they conform to the requirements being mandated by the corporate dictators that are pulling the streams of politicians. It's not about a virus. It's not about a vaccine. It's about control. Who's willing to obey and who is willing to not. COVID is a big scope screen, and it is a tool of division that will have people acting according to the required reaction. This is all part of the mind control and what we are going to be discussing a little bit this evening, but it is all based on, as we said, they created a traumatic environment for us, and the trauma is only going to get larger and deeper and more traumatic as it progresses. Who knows what is heading our way in the all apocalyptic, all out end of the days deep state agendas. They lead us towards the one world order, and we are saturated by a dome and constant network of frequencies. It's probably impossible for any one individual in the modernized Western world to walk up and down the street without being interfered with some frequency, and other, be it 5G, 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, mobile data. Is all around us, and we have so much technology now in our household that relies on frequencies and data in wireless connections, and we get caught up in the midst of it. But they do use frequencies to affect the brain waves utilized at places like HARP, the High Active Aurora Research Project. And mind control is not limited to those. For example, state-controlled education is another form of thought control, which conforms the minds of children into a mold. They are told what to believe about the past and the present, which ultimately affects their future. Remember I was going to say Deep Purple. It wasn't Deep Purple, it was Pink Floyd. We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. Teacher, leave them kids alone. I'm sure you are all too familiar with that Pink Floyd classic, The Wall. But most minds, however, the article continues to say, are set on input and regurgitation. Share and agree, copy and paste is the modern form of input and regurgitation. Those things, medical mind control, is something we have spoken also at great length at Ship Video Productions, previously at TSP TV, and briefly here at Reality Decoded. Again, some of you regular offenders should be all too familiar and a little bit more clued up than you should be on such tactics and methods being used against us to model and shape our minds into a desired thought pattern, creating hive minds and cloned, copied and paste opinions. But these minds, as we said, are set on input and regurgitation, and these methods using against us, and rather than using our own minds, as I said, this is what they're trying to do, create hive minds and implantation in a copy and pasted share and agree opinion. And that is what the one world wants, is a society of sharing and agreeing opinionated conformists. They do not want free thinkers. They don't want people who are going to question the status quo. But they are our own minds are being manipulated to stop us from using our own minds to form independent thoughts and opinions of our own. And the common sense of the majority believes that what they are told to believe, and this is very much sort of the case with the pandemic. Many people, depending on what side of the coin your stance is, whether you're pro or against COVID, many of the things that we are regurgitating are designed to tell us what to think and how to behave. But even further, they believe that those who tell them what to believe know the truth, even though they themselves have received all of the knowledge and ideas from outside sources. So where does independent thought even come into the equation? Because most of us have been influenced by outside sources, and God knows how much we've been influenced by frequency. But this is where being too trusting can get to be a danger to us. It's common sense that if you wanted to control the thoughts and minds of an entire people, you would use education, media, and even politics and religion. And the hardest part to accept that those you call your leaders would do such a thing. And it takes a long journey of new understanding and alternative knowledge to truly grasp just how easy it has been for them to control and manipulate the masses. And a little bit what I'm trying to do with these presentations and share information is to give you guys new understanding and alternative knowledge to the mainstream to make up your own minds. Make of it what you will. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm just providing you information that you can then decide what to believe for yourself based on the information available to you. And this information is not going to be presented to you, of course, on mainstream or most social media sites that will encourage you to share and agree. And by no means am I doing this for likes. I'm doing this to try and share the information. It means much, much more to me when I get comments where people say, my goodness, I did not know that. Thanks for sharing this information. I'll be sure to let others know. You don't have to share my videos, but the information that I'm sharing with you guys, if you don't share it further, it ends with you guys. And what is the point of a network of information sharers if the network breaks down at the first chain of link? But it is common sense that if you wanted to, we've already read, sorry, back to the bottom. So it has been very, very easy to control the masses and minds of society throughout the world for decades and possibly maybe even centuries. A little graphic there of Washington pumping out the propaganda directly into the mind of a caricature to represent the citizens, but programming the masses to achieve world government. It is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family tradition, natural patriotism, and religious dogma. We have swallowed all manner of poisonous certainties fed to us by our parents, our Sunday school and day school teachers, our politicians, our priests, the representation and eventual eradication of the concept of right and wrong, which has been the basis of child training, the substitution of intelligent and rational thinking for faith in the certainties of old people. These are the belated objectives for charting the changes in human behavior. Brooke Chisholm in 1959, the Humanist of the Year and former head of, unfortunately, the World Health Organization, quoted in the February 1946 issue of Psychiatry, the trauma-based mind control. And the current mind control technology grew out of experiments that the Nazis started during and before World War II. Apologies, my eyes are getting very, very squinted and the words are almost completely blurred for me. I might take a little pause and break shortly to readjust my eyesight before continuing much further, but we will read this little bit. So obviously, guys, you should know about Operation Paperclip, something we've spoken about, and some of you are clued up on Operation Paperclip. The Allies cherry-picked the best Nazi socialist, National Socialist scientists, brought them to their respective nations, nationalized them, and then put them to good work. In the United States, hey guys, you're no longer Nazis, you're now NASA. But these Nazis started looking into the mind control, what was become modern mind control technology pre-World War II, and it intensified during the time of Nazi concentration camps when an unlimited supply of children and adults were available for experimentation, as well as slave labor for the industrialists that were funding both the Allies and the Axis of evil. But we've heard about the inhumane medical experiments performed on these prisoners, but no word was ever mentioned by the media of the mind control experiments. The first phase of mind control grew out of old occult techniques, which required the victim to be exposed to massive psychological and physical trauma, usually beginning in infancy, in order to chase the psyche to shatter into 1,000 auto personalities, which can be separately programmed and can be surfaced by programmers or handlers using special code sound words or actions known as triggers. And again, something I've mentioned frequently and many times in previous streams is that in recent times the word triggered has become sort of a pop cultural phrase or slur for somebody who gets upset about things. And just recently chatting to a friend down by the lakeside, we're talking about how some people seem to have been triggered and programmed to get up and dance when they hear certain music. But the second phase of mind control development was refined at an underground base below Fort Hero on Montauk, Long Island. And we've spoken also about the Montauk Project and Camp Hero and its relation to providing the fictional Stranger Things with the majority of their plot lines. But Dr. Joseph Mengele of Auschwitz fame was the principal developer of the trauma-based Monarch Project and the CIA's MK Ultra mind control programs. Mengele and approximately 5,000 other high-ranking National Socialists were secretly moved to the US and South America after WW2 in Paperclip, as we mentioned. The National Socialists continued their work in developing mind control in the secret underground military bases, and these underground military facilities gradually became home to thousands upon thousands of kidnapped American children snatched off the streets, and approximately 1 million a year, allegedly, according to the article. But these orphans were then placed into iron bar cages stacked from floor to ceiling as part of their training, and certain selected children would become future mind-controlled slaves who would be used for thousands of different jobs, anywhere from sexual slavery to assassinations. The first studies of behavioral science was established in England in 1882, and Tavistock, guys, the good old Tavistock Institute of Human Relations was set up in London in 1921, 100 years ago, to the year pretty much, and to study the breaking point of humans. And Tavistock we have spoken about quite a lot. We've got at least 3 streams and at least 10 hours of footage for your informative and alternative educational purposes to formulate your own opinions, if not the Tavistock Institute has programmed how you have lived your life and what you have thought and how you behave. But it was formed in 1921, and it was designed to study the breaking point of humans, and in particular some of those poor troops that were sent to fight in the trenches during World War I. And Kurt Lewin, a German psychologist, became the director of the Tavistock Institute in 1932, about the same time that the National Socialists were increasing in popularity in Germany and also increasing their research in neuropsychology and parapsychology. The multi-generational occultism and an exchange of ideas between England and Germany, who would be enemies only a few years later, and most notably in the field of eugenics. And after World War II, the US brought many of the top German National Socialist and Italian fascist scientists and spies to the United States via South America and the Vatican under the code name Project Paperclip, and they were then given positions within the alphabet agencies, the CIA. That was the Tavistokian suggestion to replace the OSS, which was the Operation of Secret Services, I believe. And as I said, this is something that should be very, very common to you. So at that point, I am going to take a little break, rest my eyes, and hopefully they will refocus as we continue. But until then, guys, I will give you a couple of videos and clips to suggest and show you some other actual mind control and thought-provoking, emotion-provoking technology that does exist. So stay tuned, guys, as we will continue with this article after you've checked out these couple of videos.
And seeing and recording that activity and put it into the sensory cortex of the second animal, and that animal acquires the knowledge. From the human drone technology standpoint, you can attach the human brain to another human brain, you can direct motor activity, or you can send communication and information. Dr. Ventnor's work is, my view, the equivalent of the development of nuclear weapons when you realize that he created life in a cell. He programmed yeast cells to produce anything he wanted. These can be inserted into you through the hypospray needles. You put in a specific gene slicing, you program what you like, you put it in the cell, and it can reproduce and make as much as you like. It sends a signal and tells which portion of the DNA should unwrap, unfold, and produce a product. Related to this is an idea called DREADs. These are designer receptors that can be remotely controlled. You can create a cell, you can put it somewhere in the body, and you can remotely activate it. So you have the capacity to create any product, as long as you know the DNA sequence. You can insert it into a living system, and you can remotely control it. That may affect the way you think, the way you act. So once you know that the technology is there to edit, splice, and program a cell, and the technology currently exists to administer it to somebody and have it go park anywhere you program it to go park, proliferate, and do its function, you can have things activated in other people's brains. These people have figured out how to hide imagery in the DNA of bacteria. You can have the information reproduced in a string form as a form of a protein. The new way to hide information is going to be in DNA. This is the first experiment showing what imagery you can hide in bacteria. This is the latest. It's a GIF file. Well, this is what the Chinese are doing with DNA. Merging DNA systems with quantum computing will be really quite an amazing and both lethal threat. The next thing I wanted to mention to you is memory. Can we erase memory? Can we modify memory? Can we change memory? The short answer is yes.
Maeda and his colleagues have developed the headsets and remote control as part of a sophisticated wearable computer. They call their device a galvanic vestibular stimulation interface. It works with electrical or galvanic impulses that are transmitted wirelessly to the ear.
I'll put the electrodes on. We have to avoid the hair because hair is an insulator.
Electrical impulses travel from the remote control to a circuit board in this pouch, and by wire up to the ears, where the electrical impulses convey messages to the delicate nerves in the vestibular system.
We'll start testing now. Please stand with your feet together. Now I'll remote control your balance from left to right.
The vestibular system in our ears is what gives us a sense of balance, direction and acceleration. By sending mixed messages to the vestibular system, the remote control can literally put you off balance, sending you to the right, the left or straight ahead as you attempt to regain balance.
How do you feel?
It feels like being pulled.
Do you feel tingling in your skin?
No, I don't.
Good. That means this is working the way it should be.
Now you might be wondering why anyone would want to wear it. Well, Maeda and his team see powerful entertainment value in the device. It can certainly take virtual reality up a notch or two.
This is a car racing simulation system, which makes it possible to experience a sense of gravity from side to side. So every time the car turns a corner on the screen, your body will feel like it's being pulled.
In this case, the system is working on the inner ear sense of acceleration.
So it could be used for things like entertainment systems?
Yes, not only for huge devices at theme parks, but in smaller devices like video games at home.
The team also envisions helpful uses in daily life. Let's say you're walking to a specific destination, but don't have directions. Well, by connecting you with a remote computer program, this system could get you there. Think of it as OnStar for pedestrians.
For example, hook up the cell phone's GPS system to our galvanic vestibular system interface for people who are not good at reading maps. This will help them get to places without having to read a map.
It could act like eyes in the back of your head, using collision avoidance sensors to help you avoid cars and other threats from behind. Unlike OnStar, which uses verbal feedback, or text messaging, which uses words, this provides immediate physical feedback. Maeda says that's a huge advantage.
In this information age, it's just too much information to handle when you're using these computers. Even when you're walking outside, you have to pay attention to cars and other dangers. Controlling computers on top of these other challenges is too much information to handle. That's why it's helpful for people to have a robot, which supports us by doing certain things like paying attention to cars.
So the next time you see someone with earphones on their head behaving oddly, then take a look around. Somebody else might have a joystick.
Now, I convince you.
Delgado is fascinated by Swiss research on electrodes implanted in the brains of living cats.
When they stimulated the brain with electricity, the cat's paw moved, like so. It is showing we can change the electrical workings in a living brain. And I think, no, I believe, we can fix people.
So it's true, you want to stick wires in a human brain?
I offer a choice. Lobotomy, chop up the brains with a knife, or a few wires in the brain. No permanent damage. You control how strong is the effect. Turn it off, the effect is gone. Which would you choose?
This guy is controlling his friend like a video game character.
This thing is so cool, and I so want to try it.
I would put it on all of my children and see if I could get them to do chores.
Hey, it's bedtime.
We went to meet Alan to find out how he made a sci-fi superpower into an awesome reality.
I made it out of a remote control toy car, basically, and now I can remotely control people who agree to wear this thing.
Walk with me.
Wow. Yes! That's so bizarre.
The reactions were actually very fearful. People didn't like the idea of messing with someone's brain, so a lot of people were sort of like icked out by the whole thing. They thought it was kind of scary, which I think is really funny.
What are you doing? It's controlling him.
So how can you take over someone else's mind?
Alan is controlling his friends using their vestibular system that's responsible for balance.
Small canals in your inner ear move fluid around, and as that fluid sloshes back and forth, it excites hairs which send electrical signals into the brain. Alan's helmet is able to override those signals.
And today I'm going to talk about something that most all of us are using right now. And I don't mean your phones. I'm going to talk about your ears. So in 1790, Alessandro Volta, he had just invented the battery. And he put the electrodes in his ears and then promptly passed out. And right before he passed out, he said he felt the sensations of spinning. And most likely that sensation was from vestibular stimulation, which is what I'm going to talk about over the next several minutes. Right before I get into it, let's take a moment to think about balance. Balance is something most of us take for granted, right? Most of us can easily walk across a gravel path. We can transition from walking on a sidewalk onto grass, back onto the sidewalk. And we don't really have to think about it. People don't normally stumble doing those things. Now, maintaining balance requires that the brain receive information from three main sources. You need information from your visual system, so data coming in from the eyes. You need information from your proprioceptive system, which is your muscles and your joints. And as an example of proprioception, some of you want to follow along, or all of you, if you hold out your fingers just like that in front of your face, close your eyes, and touch the tip of your nose with your finger and eyes closed. And most everybody can do that with some amount of success, right? And that's because of your sense of proprioception, this inner sense that we have. So the third thing the brain needs is information from your vestibular system or your inner ear. So what exactly is going on inside your ear? Turns out a whole lot. The sensory information about motion, about equilibrium, about spatial orientation, all of this information goes from your vestibular system to your brain. And in each ear, you have what constitutes the vestibular system, which is what I just highlighted with that rectangle. It's three semicircular canals that are at right angles to one another, and they take care of detecting rotational movement. And then you have the utricle and the saccule. Those take care of detecting gravity as well as linear movement. It's kind of like the gyroscope and the accelerometer working in your phone. It's the same kind of system, and it's a pretty amazing system. So the semicircular canals are filled with a fluid called the endolymph. And at the base of each canal is a cupula and some hair bundles inside it. So if you look on the right side of the image, when the person rotates, the fluid gets sloshed around. And when the fluid moves, the hair moves. And then the hair sends a signal to the brain telling what's happening, right? And then there's three semicircular canals. There's essentially the anterior canal, which detects motion like this, like head nodding. There's posterior canal, which detects motion like a head tilt towards your shoulders. And then there's the lateral canal that detects motion like a swivel, your head going side to side. The utricle and the saccule, they work slightly differently. They have tiny calcium carbonate crystals, kind of like tiny bones, that are floating on top of the gel membrane, inside of which there's again hair bundles. And so when you look at the person bending over to pick up a box, the bones get pulled down because of gravity. And they pull the gel membrane along, and then the hair gets pulled along. And again, the hair sends a signal to the brain saying, all right, this is what's happening. So the utricle largely sits horizontally in your head. And that's how it detects movement in this plane. Things like moving forward, side to side. The saccule sits vertically in your head. And so it detects movement in the vertical plane. Things like sitting down or standing up. When all of this works, people can do some really amazing things with balance, right? But what happens when things don't work right? What happens if the signals that are going to the brain just don't line up? Well, that's when you get motion sickness, right? So Motion sickness essentially is a mismatch of signals that are sent to the brain from your eyes and your ears. And I imagine a lot of people have experienced this here. When you're reading a book in a moving car, your ears are telling the brain, I'm moving. But your eyes are telling the brain, nope, we're not moving, because you're essentially static relative to the car seat, the floor beneath your feet. And so it's this disagreement between those two signals that triggers nausea and vomiting, right? The same thing happens in virtual reality. Like VR, as it exists right now, essentially depends on visual information. And so the possibilities of what we can see in VR, practically endless. However, what we can feel in VR is very limited, right? Most of the time, you just feel like you're standing in your living room or sitting on your couch, even though you may be flying or swimming or doing all sorts of things in VR. Now, what if we could make you feel this motion? What if we could fix motion sickness? That's exactly what we did when we built a vestibular stimulation device. It basically is a small wearable that can automatically sense when to provide you the right type of feedback when you're in VR. The way it works is that we place electrodes behind each ear, and then we hook up the device to a small battery, and then we stimulate the nerves that I talked about earlier, the nerves that go from your inner ear to your brain. We stimulate them with a small amount of current, something like maybe 1 milliamp. So electrically stimulating the vestibular system is called galvanic vestibular stimulation, or GVS. We tested our device, we tested GVS in a VR roller coaster experience. You can imagine what a VR roller coaster might feel like. And in this case, it went from a vomit fest to something that people actually found thrilling and exciting. People are like, I want this in my home, I want to do it all the time. And they said that they could feel every turn of the roller coaster in their body, something that they'd expect to feel on a real roller coaster. Another thing we can do in VR, which is what I started to talk about, is remote control people. Basically, how can we steer people using GVS? And if you watch in the video, the person actually intends to walk straight, but they end up turning quite smoothly. And that happens, well, there's a prerequisite for it, that you need to be looking down when you do apply GVS. So if they had been looking up and we had applied GVS, they would have staggered. And that almost feels like somebody's pushing you. That doesn't feel comfortable. But this is fairly comfortable. You just turn towards the anodal direction quite smoothly. So we use this idea in building a two-person VR game, kind of like an escape the room VR game, where there's one person who's in VR and they're in a dark room. They can't see anything, but they can hear things around them. And then the other person is using a tablet or a PC. And their task is to use GVS to steer the person in VR around obstacles, help them escape the room, right? So it's a collaborative game. So this is all well and good. It's all fun and it's pretty interesting. But what else can GVS do, right? Volta didn't stick electrodes in his ears just for the sake of doing so. What he wanted to do was see how stimulating the ear could be done electrically. He wanted to see how it would impact hearing. Similarly, other researchers in the 1800s, they also tried using vestibular stimulation to see if it would fix deafness or if it would cure other diseases of the ear. Now, doctors are starting to use vestibular stimulation for things like therapy, rehab, even for training, athletic training enhancement. Scientists are starting to use GVS, trying to see how really low levels of stimulation can actually impact higher order brain function. Things like tactile sensation, face recognition, and even memory. Right, so as a last thought, we all know that machines are getting smarter by the day, right? And what if we could evolve alongside the machines? Now, brain hacking has been a futuristic fascination for decades, but we all understand that actually fully understanding the brain is going to take many, many years of work. But with GVS, we can actually get started right now by building devices that can impact small parts of the brain, hack those little areas, just like the one we created.
Welcome back to the article and a quotation from the book Psychic Dictatorship in the USA from Alex Constantine reads, "The science of mind control has achieved the scale of a criminal subculture and left a wide path of chaos and confusion that crosses all international, and I'm going to add ethical, boundaries. The carnage takes place under the noses of the public and is obscured by cover stories and dead witnesses. And the incredible naivety of most news reporters, although I would sort of suggest that the news reporters aren't naive. They are on the payroll and part of the program for mind control." But moving along, Project MK Ultra, another subject we have spoken a lot about, and I actually do have a 4.5-hour upload on TSP TV, all about MK Ultra and mind control. You should check out if you haven't already. But MK Ultra came into existence on April 13th, 1953, and it started out with 149 sub-projects that were listed under the umbrella of MK Ultra, and the Operation Spellbinder was set up to create sleeper assassins who could be activated upon receiving a keyword or phrase. Project Monarch could be the best described as a form of structured disassociation and occulted integration, in order to compartmentalize the mind into multiple personalities with a systematic framework. MPD in brackets, multiple personality disorder, and DID, dissociative identity disorder. And the Monarch project has been verified and corroborated by numerous survivors like Kathy O'Brien. I mentioned her in that Brainwashed MK Ultra upload on TSPT, and a few other individuals like Bryce Taylor, Kate Sullivan, Paul Bonanucci, and during the process of mind control, a satanic ritual, usually including Kabbalistic mysticism, is performed with the purpose of attaching a particular demon or group of demons to the corresponding altars. Many of the victims are bloodliners programmed to fulfill the destiny as the chosen ones, and some come from orphanages and foster care homes, and in the deepest and darkest of altars, in these people are purported to be dominant until the Antichrist is revealed. An altar can be accessed by anyone who happens to know the codes or triggers, and these triggers, which include an altered trance state in a programmed victim, can be anything including telephone tones, nursery rhymes, dialogues from certain movies, hand signals. MK Ultra is said to stand for manufacturing killers utilizing lethal tradecraft requiring assassinations. I'm not sure if it does or not, but that does make for interesting thought nonetheless. But in order to keep MK Ultra from being easily detected, the CIA segmented its sub-projects into specialized fields of research and developments at universities, prisons, private labs, and hospitals. Some of the major institutions involved in Monarch program experimentation were and are the Duke University of Rochester, MIT, Georgetown University Hospital, St. Elizabeth's Hospital, General Electric, Bell Laboratories, UCLA, Princeton, Cornell, MIT, etc., yada yada, whoop-de-woo, array, tay. But on August the 3rd of 1977, the 95th US Congress opened hearings into the report and abuses concerning the CIA's top secret mind control research program named MK Ultra. And on February the 8th of 1988, a top-level MK Ultra victim, Kathy O'Brien, was covertly rescued from her mind control enslavement by intelligence insider Mark Phillips, and their 7-year pursuit of justice was stopped for reasons of national security. We don't want the nation knowing about such things, and there's a link to Transformation of America by Kathy O'Brien. Is a fascinating read. Is the first documented autobiography of a victim of governmental mind control. Also here in Canada, over in Montreal, they also the CIA outsourced some contractors to carry out their experiments on behalf of them, and again, sort of outside of the borders of the United States, certain jurisdiction will apply. But Kathy O'Brien is one of the only vocal and recovered survivors of the CIA's MK Ultra Project Monarch, and if or not, she was sort of a deep state controlled opposition plant to normalize this, and why there's only one of them to sort of provide a certain narrative that may or may not be misdirection. That is up to you to decide. But Kathy O'Brien does have an awful lot of interesting stuff to say on MK Ultra and mind control in particular. But MK Ultra and Project Monarch operation, and tracing her path from child pornography and the recruitment into the program to serving as a top-level intelligence agent and White House sex slave, as was the allegations and suggestions that also Marilyn Monroe, another subject we covered at TSP TV, was also under the influence of MK Ultra and was in fact a sort of central intelligence covert secret agent that infiltrated particularly notably the Kennedy family. But they served as top-level intelligence agencies and a White House sex slave. And again, Marilyn Monroe was possibly a sex slave for the Kennedy brothers. But Transformation of America is a definitive eyewitness account of government corruption, and it implicates some of the most prominent figures in U.S. politics, and it is perfectly possible for a man to be out of prison and yet not free, to be under no physical constraint and yet to be a psychological captive, compelled to think, feel, and act as the representatives of the national state or some of the private interest within the nation wants him to think, feel, and act. And that can be applicable to each and every one of us. The nature of psychological compulsion is such that those who act under constraint remained under the impression that they are acting on their own free initiative. The victim of mind manipulation does not know that he is or she is a victim, and to him the walls of his prison are invisible, and he believes himself to be free. It's not a lie if you believe it. George Costanza, of course, a huge influence to Ship Video Productions, but that is not the fact is that he is not free is apparent only to other people, and his servitude is strictly objective, and that is from Brave New World Revisited, Aldous, written by Aldous Huxley in 1958. 8. But the lone gunmen that we hear about in assassinations and school shootings, etc., are mind-controlled individuals who have programmed to carry out these missions. Ted Bundy, the son of Sam, serial killer David Berkowitz Oswald, Timothy McVeigh, the Columbine shooters, Chapman, Saran, tens of thousands of young teenage boys were kidnapped and forced into mind control trading, as was Ted Krasinski, the Unabomber, who's a Harvard University, then was subjected to MK Ultra, and his manifesto, the Unabomber's manifesto, is a particular interesting read into the dangers of the technological revolution. Check that out. But many of these young boys were kidnapped and forced into mind control training programs, as were the people aforementioned. But the Montauk project, starting around 1976 rather, Al Bilek, under mind control, was involved in many areas of the secret Montauk project. After slowly recovering his memories in the 80s, he came to realize there were at least 250,000 mind-controlled Montauk boys, as they refer to, and produced at 25 different facilities similar to the underground base at Montauk, and some would become sleepers later on, triggered to engage in some sort of destructive conduct. Others were woven into the fabric of mainstream American life as journalists, radio and TV personalities, pop stars, movie stars, TV celebrities, such forth, as well as businessmen, lawyers, medical professionals, judges, prosecutors, law enforcement, and military men, people of influence. If you can control the minds of those that influence the mind of the masses, your job's half done. But there are various levels of programming. It is where it gets interesting. Alpha is regarded as the general or regular programming within the base control personality, and it is characterized by extremely pronounced memory retention, increased physical strength, and visual accuracy. Alpha program is accomplished through deliberately subdividing the victim's personality, which in essence creates left brain, right brain division, and allowing for a programmed union of left and the right through neuron pathway simulation. Beta, which is something that is being used on the masses and being introduced and influenced through social media and such things, movie posters and contemporary TV shows. This is what is going on. This is why you will see an awful lot of purple on mainstream and social media at the moment. Open your eyes and see the purple. We've spoken about purple and its significance also at TSP TV, and what they are doing now is beta programming, and this explains the rise of the beta male, and this is referred to as sexual program, although you don't necessarily have to use beta program to make sex slaves. You can just use beta program to make slaves in general that will do anything you want them to do. But delta program is known as the killer program, and it is optimal adrenal output and controlled aggression is evident. Devoid of fear, very systematic in carrying out their assignments. Self-destruct or suicide instructions are layered into this level of programming. Theta programming, considered psychic programming, bloodliners were determined to exhibit a greater propensity for having telepathic abilities than non-bloodliners. Due to the limitations, various forms of electronic mind control systems were developed, brain implants and directed energy lasers using microwave and or electromagnetics. Think why we have 5G and so many devices, technological devices in our household that all rely on unseen wireless and frequency connections. But omega programming is another thing I believe is possibly being used for people that have been segregated under social isolation and self-quarantine recommendations. It might be why, you know, we've seen an increase in suicides during the COVIDian era. But omega program is a self-destruct form of programming, also known as code green suicide or self-mutilation, and this is generally activated when the victim begins therapy or interrogation and too much memory is being recovered. Gamma programming is another form of system protection through deception programming, which elicits misinformation and misdirection. This level is entwined with demonology rather, and tends to regenerate itself at a later time if inappropriately deactivated. But this initial process begins with creating disassociation with the subject. Again, this is all what we've been subjected to the last 12 months. Disassociated to what was considered normal to us and introduced with a very, very uncertain, disruptive, depressing new normal with an awful lot of weird and bizarre, tyrannical, draconian requirements and mandates and bills being enforced. But this usually begins at a very, very early age. But this is formally referred to as a multiple personality disorder, and it is presently recognized as a dissociative identity disorder and is the basis for Monarch program. So again, guys, they've created a very disruptive environment where we don't really know what is going on. Society is being disconstructed, and we are being disassociated with the past that are creating the perfect conditions, and also creating the prime candidates for mind control by, you know, socially distancing people and segregating them and not allowing them to go to work, to school, or interact or mingle with friends and family. But the basis for Monarch program, as we just said, is I got sidetracked then. So that is the basis for Monarch program, and a further condition is enhanced through hypnotism, double-blind coercion, and pleasure pain reversals, food, water, and sleep deprivation, along with various drugs that alter certain cerebral functions in a sort of form of hypnotism. Is your social media news feeds, be it Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, whatever it is. These are all designed to sort of put you in a sort of hypnotic trance-like state, and then the purpose of the social media is to deliver you sort of advertising programming, but you will also be susceptible to an awful lot of propaganda, and determining on what information you give your artificially intelligent handler that resides within your smart technology, it will then decide how and what to program you with. So moving on, the next stage is embedded and compresses detailed commands or messages within the specified order. And again, last year I told you about how disturbed I was by the copy and paste the bunny mimetic that many, in fact millions and millions of people responded to without a question and copied and pasted the bunny. These are triggers and commands, and it was around 6 months into the scam pandemic that started to circulate, and I really do truly believe that the establishment that are carrying out this and the people that are trying to brainwash and manipulate the minds of the masses were using that as a experiment to see how many people had been subjected to brainwashing. And again, your brainwashing is tailor-made for you to believe what they want you to believe, and it doesn't matter if you've been brainwashed to believe you should wear a mask or shouldn't wear a mask. past, you've been brainwashed to command upon response. And many people, maskers and non-maskers, responded to the call of action, the trigger, to copy and paste the bunny. And of course, the bunny is a symbol, along with the monarch butterfly, that is strongly associated with MK Ultra and mind control projects. And also down the rabbit hole is where the term from Alice in the Wonderland does get fixed to those individuals like myself who do enjoy to try and research some of this alternative knowledge for you. But this is achieved through the use of, sorry, did I get ahead of myself? So various drugs that can alter certain cerebral functions, and the next stage is to embed and compass detailed commands or messages within the specified alter. We're all being programmed into altered. We're all trying to be made into human drones, clones, hive minds, and this is achieved through high-tech headsets. And almost the majority of people that do use their cellular and smart technology for their entertainment purposes are doing so through headphones. And with these high-tech headsets, and in conjunction with computer-driven generators, i.e. algorithms and artificial intelligence that emit inaudible sound waves or harmonica that affect the RNA covering of neuron pathways to the subconsciousness and unconscious mind. A high voltage electric shock is used for memory dissolution, and programming is updated periodically and reinforced through visual, auditory, and written mediums. And again, copy and paste, share and agree are written mediums, and these are things that you regularly and periodically are subjected to on your news feeds. This is a form of modern mind control. This is MK Ultra. This is Monarch in plain sight on your news feeds, turning us all into hive mind cloned, copy and paste opinion aided drones. But some of the first programming themes included The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, as we've mentioned, and both heavily saturated with occultist symbolism. Many of the recent Disney movies and cartoons are used in a twofold manner, desensitizing the majority of the population while using subliminals and neuro-linguistic programming, deliberately constructing specific triggers and keys for the base programming of highly impressionable monarch children. And music also plays an instrumental role in programming through combinations of variable tones, rhythms, and words. So there is a video there that unfortunately, surprise, surprise, is unavailable for you to watch. So we can't do that. The next stage is harp, but let's take a little break and show you a couple more relevant videos before we continue reading, and it will give my eyes a little bit of a chance to rest. So see you shortly.
My seizures occur every 14 days or so. I don't actually know what the seizure itself feels like since I'm unconscious, but prior to having a seizure, it was almost like a hallucination in which I heard a man's voice saying, "I'm gonna come get you."
Livia Amita suffers from epilepsy, an electrical disorder in the brain that causes seizures and has afflicted people from Roman Emperor Caligula all the way to Danny Glover. Livia, however, is about to fight electricity with electricity as her neurosurgeon implants 14 electrodes deep into her brain in order to investigate the part where the seizures originate.
All right, let's drive to the first site.
Her brain surgeon is Stanford neuroscientist Casey Halpern.
Like, in terms of like the overall complexity of the brain, how much does neuroscience know? Do you have like an estimate the way like astronomers are like, oh yeah, there's like 98% of the galaxy that we just don't know?
I think it's a reasonable analogy. There's so much we don't know, but what we do know, we know quite well. You do have to think about brain function as being due to where one part of the brain is connected to the other.
It's all a big circuit.
It's all a big circuit.
And Livia's brain is now even more of a circuit, which allows Dr. Halpern's team to map the brain's functions by trying out the different connections.
What we're trying to do now primarily is to figure out brain function by inactivating a specific area of the brain by passing electricity through it.
By passing an electrical current between two of the electrodes, the doctors can hopefully figure out what the part in between does, or doesn't.
All right, RPOA 1, 2 at 3.
Did you feel anything unusual with that one?
I feel like I was lifted a little bit.
5 and 6.
When we did that one, it made me feel a little bit nervous.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I want you to stare right at the dot. Tell me if anything changes, okay?
Uh-huh.
What's happening?
A rainbow dot showed up in the upper left-hand corner.
Great. Let's go RPOI 6, 7.
Now the sparkles were more just right to the left of the dot.
Can you count down from 10? Go.
10, 9. Wait, 7, 6, 5, 4.
What happened? Were you trying to talk?
Uh-huh. At least I think I was still trying to go down the numbers.
So you knew what you wanted to say,
Uh-huh.
but you just couldn't do it.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Cyborg.
In order to make the brain work better, first you have to look under the hood and learn how the brain works in the first place. Unfortunately, human beings are a little squeamish historically when it comes to cracking open your cranial cavity. So it's been left to neuroscientists to do their brain research on subjects who are a little more willing. They're less willing than unable to get away. Due to some similarities between their brains and humans, Dr. Halpern and his team have been using mice as their research subjects, trying to map out the neural networks responsible for different sorts of behavior.
We can inform larger leaps in science or translations to medical care, changing the way we treat patients and brain disorders, at least in the context of an area of interest of mine, which is in trying to control impulses.
This experiment's target impulse is binge eating.
We tried to provoke their binge by giving them a high-fat pellet. It tastes like butter.
I swear to God, I thought he was wearing like a tiny Burger King crown for a second.
Well, that is the pin on the top of the electrode that we connect the wires to, so that we can actually stimulate the area of the brain that we know can lead to attenuation of binge eating.
Just like plugging in a pair of speakers.
If a mouse or a human is anticipating a food reward, we know that right before that patient gets the food reward, the nucleus accumbens will light up. You can liken that to alcoholism, about to take a swig. You can liken that to meeting up with your drug dealer right before you pay the drug dealer. And so if we can target that activity, maybe we can alter that decision by blocking the impulse. Go ahead.
Something to put it in.
And then remotely we can monitor the brainwaves and actually intervene in real time.
Smelling it. Physically, what's the therapy? It's just a minor shock, or is it,
It is definitely not a shock, though I would understand why you would think that. It is a low-dose delivery of electrical stimulation.
He's still eating.
And the stimulation just got triggered.
Whoa, okay, yeah. So now he doesn't want to eat it.
The binge gets interrupted, so it will stop binge eating. But it won't start behaving in a strange, adverse way. It doesn't make the mouse freeze or anything like that. It just seems to make the mouse a little less interested in binge eating.
Okay.
We have all these episodic conditions, impulses that drive behavior that can be dangerous. An impulse to binge eat or commit suicide or take advantage of a coworker sexually. These are impulses that we don't need. We can actually control these problems, perhaps in the most severe of cases with surgery. We should be able to have a major impact on our society.
The brain. This has 100 electrodes on it, and this is the part that tunnels out of the skull onto this connector, and then that's the side that allows us to connect to the neurons. Yeah. It's really an amazing technology.
Can you explain the experiment to me?
The main focus of the lab is to understand basic sensory motor control and cognition, because if we're going to build systems that can restore that, we need to know what the target is. So in that spirit, we use a brain-computer interface system to do our basic science research in normal, healthy, intact monkeys.
Today's monkey is Earl, one of 6 non-human primates taking part in Dr. Batista's experiment.
How similar to human brains are rhesus monkey brains?
In terms of rudimentary sensory motor coordination, the type of stuff we need to understand, they've got what we've got.
That's Earl thinking? That's the neurons part?
Each small rectangle is a different neuron.
The electrode array in Earl's BCI has been wired to a group of neurons associated with the motor function of his right arm.
All right, everyone ready?
Earl's limbs have been gently restrained for the course of the experiment, so it's purely his thoughts moving the dot to its target.
How do you teach him not to go outside the lines?
Everything we use is positive reinforcement. So when he does the task correctly, he'll get a reward.
What is his reward? Is it just a clicking sound, or?
No, he's getting a liquid reward.
For the monkey, they have a lot of dexterity, but you're limited by their cognitive understanding of what we need them to do.
Right.
So we're never going to get a monkey to type out a text message. However, there's a lot that can be developed here that can facilitate how those devices perform in people.
While Earl can't use his BCI to text, back at Stanford, Dr. Jamie Henderson has been working with a subject who can not only text with his BCI, he can buy things on Amazon and leave a review, because he is a human being.
The entire purpose of the type of work that we're doing, the brain-computer interface, is to try to get intention out of the brain in order to use it to do something useful in the outside world.
I was a mechanical engineer. I spent most of my life building machinery. And it's always been a joke. I loved machinery so much that someday I would become one. So right now, I'm just typing with thoughts.
Before he could type with his mind, Dennis DeGray was a volunteer firefighter who became quadriplegic in 2007 after taking a nasty spill. Dr. Henderson implanted Dennis's BCI in 2016, and he's been experimenting with it ever since.
Dumb question of all dumb questions. What does it do?
It acts more or less as a hearing aid, listening to the very basic activities of my brain.
Are you thinking of moving the cursor itself, or are you thinking of using a mouse?
The visualization I found most comfortable for me was imagining a pool ball on a table with my hand on top of the pool ball. You roll away, it goes up, you pull back, it goes down, you left, right accordingly.
Like a trackball.
Like the old tabletop video games.
Yeah. How do you think click? Does it?
I imagine snapping the fingers on my left hand.
Okay.
And so it's a nice abrupt movement, and the system can pick it up out of the rest of the background noise very clearly.
How do you separate what you're making the computer do from thinking about things you're hearing?
Thinking and typing would be equivalent to you riding your bicycle and thinking about what you're going to do at the office today.
Right.
I mean, the two don't really cancel each other out. They're just, not necessarily connected. What I'm doing now is beyond my wildest dreams from when I started. Sometimes I'm surprised, sometimes I'm overwhelmed, I'm frequently frustrated, but this is still research, and we are still learning. I believe every week we are making significant scientific breakthroughs.
While the medical world is blurring the lines between mind and machine in order to help restore their patients' abilities, military researchers are using similar technology for, unsurprisingly, military purposes.
This is my colleague, David. He's learning to move things with his mind.
Well, there you go.
David and I are visiting a company called Emotive. Emotive wants to build technology that can channel our brainwaves into real-world commands.
I think we're on the cusp of a type of brain augmentation that will transform the way that we are as humans.
Tanli is the founder of Emotive, and the way she describes her company's goal is kind of science fiction-y.
We're applying science to make the Force come alive.
What Emotive is doing is an extremely long way off from any of this stuff. But it's the beginning of something big, with the promise that one day our thoughts could control the objects around us.
Can I put it on your head? Okay, here we go. So we can see here what parts of your brain are most excited, are most active.
Emotive's headset works by first learning a pattern of your brainwaves. Any pattern, you choose it.
Next, I want you to think of a thought that you're going to use to control this cube and push it away
And what's
into the
a-
distance.
Is there a certain type of thought?
It could be any thought, something that you think you can reimagine as accurately as possible later on command. Ready? And go.
The computer records his brain activity while he thinks that thought.
How'd that go? I guess we'll find out.
Now, when the computer sees the same brain pattern, it will move the cube.
Ooh, ooh. Hey, okay, whatever you did that time was definitely, you can, are you?
That's weird.
Huh?
Well, the weirdest thing is to your suggestion, imagine yourself pushing the cube.
Uh-huh.
So like I imagined like a little me inside of this box pushing this cube, and now it's just...
So now we know what your brain looks like when you're imagining a little you pushing a cube.
Pushing this cube, that's...
The same process can be used to move basically anything.
So we're gonna give it a try.
Yeah.
I think you can do it.
Okay.
Well, there you go. Mini you is doing well.
Well, now I've lost control of it. Okay, there we go. Wow. Okay.
Think of Emotive's technology like a simple yes, no, or on-off switch you can program, sort of like a universal remote control. Tan Lee imagines a scenario where you could teach the headset to recognize several different brain patterns.
There are really no limits to the kinds of things that we can control. We can do anything from turning on your TV, to program your TV channels, Netflix, turning on and off the lights. And the most powerful thing is all you're using is your brain. You can do all of that simply by thinking.
Emotive's goal is a world where headsets like this are everywhere, maybe embedded in a hat or a pair of glasses. But it's crucial to understand the limits of where this technology currently is. It's not the Force.
Some of the claims are overblown. It's different than the Force in that your brain thoughts by themselves are not causing a physical interaction with an object.
Virginia DeSaw is a cognitive science professor at UC San Diego. She's an expert in brain-computer interfaces. She says the technology is promising, but still in its infancy.
What you can't do right now is you can't say, think I want light on and turn the light on. Think I want the TV on and turn the TV on. Think I want the dishwasher on and turn the dishwasher on.
She also says the technology is easily overhyped. Last year, Emotive released a video of a paraplegic man driving a Formula One car using just his brain and an Emotive headset. The video went viral, partly because of how impressive it made the technology seem, but DeSaw says we should be skeptical of what we're seeing here. You can't drive a car with your brain. And the driver in this video was probably only controlling certain elements.
Likely in the case of the car is taking care of maintaining speed, staying in the lane, avoiding hitting anything.
And Emotive's headsets actually have a long way to go in just recording brain signals accurately. Think of how jerky the movement was when David tried to move that block. Specific brain signals can be really difficult to capture, and even with the latest EEG technology, we can't see them quite clearly.
So it's like looking at something through the shower glass where it's frosted glass and it's blurring everything out.
Still, the capabilities are enough that companies are developing systems to allow so-called neurogamers to compete with their thoughts. And similar tech developed in other labs allows people to control artificial limbs with their minds. And maybe there's more ahead. People like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and the entrepreneur Brian Johnson are developing brain control technology. Facebook is talking about a system where we will type with our thoughts.
It sounds impossible, but it's closer than you may realize.
These are big names with big money. But remember, right now, what the technology actually does is still pretty basic.
There you go.
Still, the potential for harnessing the power of human thought is definitely exciting. And if the technology improves, one day it could be big.
I think that this moment, it's an extremely exciting frontier that can truly transform our understanding of ourselves and also change the way we perceive our own limits as humans as well.
So hopefully you have been finding some of these videos interesting and informative. I'm not going to say enjoyable because it's nothing enjoyable to be presented with the information and the facts that this technology does exist, can be used against each and every one of you, and is being used in each and every one of you. And again, another little reason I sort of forgot to mention earlier that we are sort of doing this presentation, thought control, which is some topics that is all too familiar to some of the regular offenders, as we did start out at the beginning of this presentation, is because recently I did have a stream that was removed. It did get me a copyright strike, did get me shut down for a week on YouTube, titled Total Population Control, when we did look at quite a lot of the sort of technology and methodology available to the establishment in terms of not just controlling our minds, but the environment and the atmosphere that in turn will create, have an effect on our moods. And that was removed, and for what YouTube considered contradicted the World Health Organization's stance on COVID-19. But we did talk a little bit about HAARP, and I do recall Baby Pamplin, our dear Becky P., saying every time she thought she understood HAARP, she was given reason to think and look differently at it after that presentation. But we are going to look briefly at HAARP here, not as much as we did in Total Population Control, which we sort of pretty much generated around HAARP and Gwen Towers. But there is a little picture of the ionosphere, depending on what your belief of the Earth is. If it's flat, is it circular? Is it hollow? Is it a terrarium? Are we living in a snow globe or a virtual reality? Who knows? But there is, as I said, the ionosphere around the Earth, and it says that the Earth is wrapped in a donut-shaped magnetic field, the ionosphere, and an electromagnetic wave conductor 62 miles above the Earth consists of a layer of electrically charged particles that act as a shield from solar winds. Natural waves are created which result from electrical activity in the atmosphere. The waves are called the Schumann resonance. We've spoken about this before on several occasions, with the strongest current registering at 7.8 hertz, and there are quasi-standing scalar ELF, extra low frequency waves, that naturally exist in the Earth's electromagnetic cavity. These Earth brain waves are identical to the frequency spectrum of our human brain. We've done what's going on the right side of the screen there. It seems to be getting a bit disorientated. Maybe that is our good old algorithmic friend trying to shut me up. But these Earth brain waves are, as I said, identical to the frequency spectrum of our human brain waves, and humans are made to resonate to the natural Schumann resonance frequency pulsation in order to evolve harmoniously. This is why grounding is very, very important, and why now the warmer weather has arrived here in southern Ontario, Canada. Being outside, certainly down by the lakeshore there, the water, the plants, the animals, the sand, the grass, everything is natural pretty much. Although I'm pretty sure, we're not escaping that much electromagnetic and radio frequency wave pollution, but grounding is very important, not to mention getting as much natural vitamin D and dopamine from the sun. Stop getting your dopamine from sharing and agreeing and copying and pasting popular opinions that are tools of mind control and thought implantation, as they convert us into human sharing and agreeing drones. Hive mind, we are the Borg. That is what the one world order is all about. But the ionosphere is, however, being manipulated by the good old United States government scientists and also private contractors, I'm sure, using HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. And there is a picture, a little bit of how or what rather the HAARP facility looks a little bit like. Moving on, HAARP the High Active Auroral Research Program, ELF low-frequency waves produced by HARP can target selected areas and can weather engineer and create mood changes affecting millions of people. Yesterday here in Toronto, at time of recording, it was a constant barrage of chemtrailing, almost like every 10-15 minutes apart. You couldn't look at the sky and see a plane leaving a track, and the residue of previous trails. And lo and behold, yesterday sunny blue skies, today we've had rain, and tomorrow storms are forecast, as well as I believe down in the Gulf Coast there in Mississippi, Louisiana area, they might be getting torrential 20 inches of rain today. But the natural geomagnetic waves coming from the ground are being replaced by artificially created low-frequency ground waves coming from Gwen Towers, Ground Wave Emergency Network. And these transmitters, placed 200 miles apart across the USA, allow specific frequencies to be tailored to the geometric field strength in each area. Before we carry on, just understand that your cellular phone, your smart technology can also be tailor-made and deliver specific frequencies to a targeted individual, not necessarily a targeted area, a targeted individual. So they are sort of narrowing it down. There's mass manipulation, there's individual mass manipulation. We aren't free of manipulation. This way you have to open your eyes and free your mind. Believe nothing, question everything. The United States and the globe is bathed in a magnetic field which goes up to 500 feet, and it also goes down, so that everybody can be affected and mind controlled. The Gwen transmitters have many functions, including weather control, mind control, behavior and move control, and sending synthetic telepathy as infrasound to victims with government control, mind control implants. Maybe this is what they are trying to introduce to us via the vaccine. And again, something we do need to be very aware of was Operation Crimson Mist in Rwanda, and similar in modern society to what was going on then. There's a lot of disassociation. The government of Rwanda and all the official governmental officials were killed in a plane crash that was part of a black secret American alphabet agency operation in Rwanda. Take out the heads and officials, and the rest of the will crumble, so to speak. But there were two conflicting insurgent tribes in Rwanda that were looking to take control in the absence of government, and the CIA, using agent provocateurs and frequencies and such forth, was an experiment for this technology, manipulated the minds of both sides of the tribe, same people influencing the both, and sort of kicked up a lot of confrontation and angry and anxiety against each other. And that's a little bit what we have in modern society around the world. Maskers, non-maskers, these kind of people are battering out when they don't realize they are all the same livestock on the same farm. We're all sheep lined up for slaughter. Some of us will be designated as useful eaters, some of us will be useless eaters, and probably will inadvertently end up as Soylent Green. But all the technology is saturated around us in our homes, on buildings, in the ground, every 200 miles apart over the USA. Gwen Towers, and these can trigger the same frequencies and effects that were used by the CIA out in Rwanda back in '93, that did ultimately end in a genocide. Let that sink in, guys. So are we being, pitted against each other in the divide and conquer under the COVIDian guys, the anti-lockdowners and the pro-maskers? This sort of stuff is straight from Crimson Mist. Create two opposing factors and then stimulate them with desired propaganda, and then blast them with frequencies that will turn them into essentially rage-based zombies. But these functions, as we just said, they can send telepathy as infrasound to victims with implants. Are they trying to implant us with the injections? I'm not entirely sure what to make of vaccines. I do believe it is part and parcel of propaganda and kind of acknowledging them, and the divide and conquer might be sort of empowering it, but I'm not entirely certain if or not they are injecting people who are getting the vaccine with these nano implants that can be activated. But Gwen works in conjunction with Harp, hand in hand. One symbiotically fuels the other. Dr. Adrija Pulhariak, if I'm reading that right, found that clairvoyance brainwaves became 8 hertz when their psychic powers were operative, and a person can deliberately shift his consciousness from one level to another, making 8 hertz waves. One person emitting a certain frequency can make another also resonate to the same frequency. Again, a little bit why they have the social circles and have 6 friends and sit in a little circle is so that they can kind of create this, so that there be sort of the prime candidate that will be targeted to resonate at 8 gigahertz, and then his little social circle buddies will also resonate on the same, making little sort of splinter cells of hive mind controlled orders. But our brains are extremely vulnerable to any technology which sends out ELF waves. I really don't know what is going on with the screen there. Pulharic, whatever his name is, discovered that 7.83 hertz, the Earth's pulse rate, made a person feel good, producing an altered state. 1080 hertz, remember we have 1080 HD televisions, causes riotous behavior, and funny enough, 6.6 hertz causes depression. The individual whose name I can't read presented the mental effects of ELF to military leaders, but they refused to believe him. The US government eventually burned down his house in New York to shut him up, and he fled to Mexico. He has since met the CIA and started working for them, and he created a dental tooth implant which mind control victims can claim was put in their mouth, causing them to hear voices in their head. Text to skull technology, voice of God technology. The Russians discovered the mental effects of ELF and began zapping the US embassy in Moscow. Remember the woodpecker effect? Focusing on 10 hertz, which puts people into a hypnotic state. Good old Nikola Tesla revealed in 1901 power could be transmitted through the ground, and it used ELF waves, and nothing would stop or weaken these signals. The Russians retrieved his papers, and they were finally returned to Yugoslavia after his death, according to the article. Again, many of us do know that good old Donald Trump's uncle obtained these papers, so I'm not sure if not they did arrive in Yugoslavia, or once Trump's grandfather photocopied them, or his uncle rather photocopied and copied them, he then sent them over, or sent them only part of what he wanted them to have. Alpha waves are used in televisions, and electromagnetic oscillations in the frequency range of 8 to 12 hertz, arising from synchronous and coherent electrical activity of thalamic peacemaker cells in humans. I don't know what I got a little bit lost there, but predominantly I can't read that word. These originate from the occipital lobe during wakeful relaxation with closed eyes. ASMR, guys, very, very popular, where people relax, listen to tingly sounds in whispering voices with their eyes closed, often with headphones on. Alpha waves place you into a trance-like state as you are watching television, and as you are told what to think by scripted newsreaders, what to buy, where to shop, what to wear, what to eat. At the same time, you are disassociated from reality and the real problems that exist in the world by being engulfed in the latest episode of Jersey Shore or American idle. Each one of the major media corporations gets their news from one or two places, Reuters and the Associated Press, and Reuters is owned by the Rothschilds. RHIC, radio hypnotic cerebral control. This calls for the implantation of a very small micro radio receiver. It acts as a stimulator, which will simulate a muscle or electronic brain response. In turn, this can set off a hypno-programmed cue to the victim of subject, which would elicit a preconditioned behavior. Developed by the Pentagon, supposedly, and remember last summer, upload on TSP TV, Manchurian Karens. What's the deal with that? And in that, I suggested that maybe people who have become Karens, have been programmed to become Karens in certain things, will trigger them when they are out and about in society. And, you know, the behavior of attacking non-maskers might be that preconditioned behavior that was programmed into the Manchurian Karens. I really don't know what's going on with that screen on the side there. EDOM, electronic dissolution of memory, and this calls for remotely controlled production within the brain of acetylcholine, which blocks the transmission of nerve impulses to the brain, which results in sort of a selective amnesia. According to an informative article, both of these methods are already being used. Obey, never trust your thoughts, I think that says. I don't know what is going on with this screen. It's like one side's melting. How much more have we got? I'm going to continue with this. It's nearly at the end, and we'll finish up with a few more videos for your informative and alternative educational purpose. But the corporate mass media is now in the hands of 6 corporations, and the top 3 of those corporations are General Electric, Westinghouse, and Disney. And these 3 take control of 90% of all book publishing, films, videos, radio, and television. ELF is a high-tech weapon. It is a silent weapon for a quiet war, abbreviated for extra low frequency signals, which mimic natural brain waves, replacing our natural brain waves with synthetic brainwaves. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word then. It is not only to be used to brainwash and control people, it is also used to physically attack them as well. The towers are everywhere. You're expected to presume they are only for cell phones, but it is not an accident that the frequency band chosen for cell phones are just so happens the frequency that matches the second order waves that Wilhelm Reich discovered in the late 1940s to affect thought transmission and to allow the mind to be manipulated without the victim realizing. That's why I'm saying, guys, how much thought control is being programmed into us. Have we ever even once had our own thought, or have our own thoughts been implanted and suggested subliminally to us with all of these technologies and methodologies available to the powers that be that are really out to control each and every one of us? We are livestock on the human farm. Some of us useless, some of us useful eaters, and more importantly, the useful ones they do want to be able to control, like a hive mind with a copy and pasted opinion, sharing and agreeing with the narrative of the one world order. But he was outraged to find that the CIA was planning and is using it on American people, and he was covertly murdered in a federal prison in 1957, just a few weeks before he was due to be released. He was reported to have had a heart attack, and heart attacks are something that can be triggered via frequency. And another individual that died of a heart attack, who was also a very outspoken person against the establishment, was George Carlin. But the device is known as the orgone generator, and this can disable these ELF towers from exerting their mind control functions. Radio hypnotic intercerebral control. This calls for the implantation of a very small micro radio receiver, and it acts as a simulator which will simulate a muscle or electronic brain response. This in turn can set off a hypo-programmed cue in the victim of subject, which could elicit a preconditioned behavior. And this was developed by the Pentagon. Didn't we just read that? And something about selective memory. Sorry, I think we I don't know what's going on here. It is acting a little bit bizarrely, but I will continue despite the interference from possibly artificially intelligent algorithms. But electronic dissolution of memory, this calls for remotely controlled production within the brain of, we have read this, which blocks the transmission of nerve impulses in the brain, which results in a sort of selective amnesia. MK Ultra mind control revealed the true story. 1998. We are nearly at the bottom of this article. My forgiveness there. I think that the article actually repeated some of the stuff from above. But Bryce Taylor is the pseudonym for Susan Ford, one of the highest level MK Ultra mind control victims ever to come forward and reveal her story. It took her nearly 13 years, starting in 1985, following a car accident that threw her through the windshield of that car. It wasn't really an accident as much as a result of mind control programming, which compelled her to commit suicide. That was the Theta programming. And if she began to recover critical memories about her role as a top-level NASA/CIA mind-controlled asset who was used as a sex slave and message or drug courier for every president from Kennedy to Clinton. And she was Henry Kissinger's personal secretary / human computer, in brackets, file storage and retrieval. And she did that for 19 years. Her own handler was comedian Bob Hope, and she was loaned out to many famous and well-known entertainment personalities in order to oblige them to be beholding and to be manipulated by Hope and his Illuminati pals. We covered Bob Hope in a couple of previous streams on this subject. So they could, and they were all programmed to be manipulated by Bob Hope and his Illuminati pals, so they could be used as worker bees to help usher in the Luciferian New World Order. And that does conclude this article. It does give us a brief little indication on some of the... I really look at what's going on with that screen there. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully that didn't affect you're able to, I'm not going to say enjoy this. It's nothing enjoyable about finding out about all this technology that is used to alter our brain waves, our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, what we think, what we eat, what we drink. All of this stuff has been implanted into us, and the only way you can set yourself a little bit free from it is to have your eyes open, be aware, do some research into this technology, and limit the amount of interaction you have with cellular and smart technology. But I am gonna, as I said, stop this article now and head you back to a few more videos, and I am getting close to the deadline time where I do need to stop recording and finish up the processing and editing stage in order to get this ready in time for you to watch right now. See you soon.
I'm at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, having an electrode attached to my head and arm so that I can accentuate my focus by electricity. Low-level electricity. Wright-Patterson houses the Air Force Research Lab's Applied Neuroscience branch.
Instead of working on technology that enhances an airplane or the computational systems that the airmen use, we're taking a different approach in that we're seeing what we can do to actually enhance the airmen themselves.
While this approach is nothing new to the Air Force, instead of giving pilots extremely strong stimulants, Dr. McKinley's team is using transcranial direct current stimulation, which is simply where you put electrodes on either side of the brain and run a current from one to the other to amplify the parts of the brain it's zapping through.
The distractions are much less, and I can kind of zone in on each individual category instead of being overwhelmed.
Whenever you're ready, just hit start experiment.
Oh, shoot. I'm not great at this. Not amazing.
So once we turn it on, the typical sensations are a tingly sensation.
Okay.
So basically, you're going to do the same thing again, and then we'll see what happens. So go ahead.
I feel a lot more into this.
All right. Yeah. Your score is down here. That's first time. That's second time.
I cleaned up a lot. Yeah. Yeah, it sort of feels like I kind of bypassed the drinking of coffee and put it just straight up into my noodle.
Attached to this mouse's head can wirelessly inject drugs deep into its brain at the click of a button. Scientists from the universities of Washington and Illinois say it can both shine light pulses onto brain cells and deliver drugs. The remote-controlled device has an ultra-thin probe, smaller than the width of a human hair, which is implanted into the brain. It's powered by a tiny battery with drugs contained in small reservoirs. Its microfluidic channels can administer drugs, while a tiny LED delivers photostimulation. Here, the mouse on the right was made to walk in circles after a drug was injected into specific brain cells. Other tests use pulses from the tiny LED to stimulate the neurons of mice engineered to respond to light. The scientists say they were able to determine the path a mouse walked when they stimulated the brain in different ways. Their implant, they say, is less damaging to brain tissue than the metal tubes, or cannulas, scientists typically use to inject drugs. They hope such a device could eventually lead to the development of less invasive probes to wirelessly treat a range of neurological disorders in humans.
Imagine the implications of a weapon with no visible trace, a weapon that could knock out tanks, ships, and planes as fast as the speed of light. The same technology with modifications could disorient and even tranquilize military personnel, rendering them virtually helpless in the battle zone. These are the new weapons of war we will examine in this series. For the past 40 years, the world has been riveted by the threat of nuclear war, and more recently by the prospect of space defenses using lasers and other modern technologies. But while both sides at the Geneva summit will be focusing on these matters, progress is being made in even newer weapons that could render any arms agreement relatively useless. Lightning is the most dramatic form of energy to be found in nature. Scientists have succeeded in creating limited types of artificial lightning, and some think that these could be the forerunners of a new type of directed energy weapon.
Find out if such a thing could actually work, I offered my own brain for a test. It seemed like fun at the time.
Hold it up, you can look at it.
Psychiatrist and neurologist Mark George said he could make my thumb twitch.
Jeez, it does.
Oh, that was nice. Using a map of the brain, he can zap the area that controls a specific body part, like my toe.
Oh, wow. I stroked a little too much? A little bit, yeah, it was a little much. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The wand can even affect someone's speech.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
And once the pulse is removed,
25, 26.
Everything goes back to normal.
29, 30.
It's sort of a remarkable thing that one can put something over somebody's head and modify the way they behave.
Wow. The wand works by producing a powerful magnetic pulse.
It doesn't look like a lot, but the magnetic field that it generates is about the strength of an MRI machine, of a very strong MRI machine.
Since electricity and magnetism are really just two forms of the same thing, a magnet can affect the electrical signals in your brain. Now this is your brain. It's basically an electric web of billions of neurons wired together. When a strong magnetic pulse hits these neurons, it alters their electric current. The process is called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS.
Electricity is the currency of the brain. All thoughts, all beliefs, all actions are just electrical impulses. And so TMS, we're actually able to get in there and influence the currency of the brain focally and non-invasively.
The stronger the magnetic pulse, the deeper into the brain it goes. And by adjusting the pattern of the pulse, you can change the way that part of the brain functions.
We can turn a part of the brain up or down or temporarily turn it off. It doesn't take a genius to see that it should be a pretty fertile way to begin to understand how.
Did you know that every day we are surrounded by invisible electromagnetic radiation? From microwaves, dishwashers, computers, televisions, power lines, wiring in the building, to cell phones. They all produce electromagnetic radiation. You know what? Raise your hand if you own a cell phone. Now guess what? These days, every kid wants to have a cell phone, but cell phones give radiation, and if exposed to too much radiation, you may get a tumor or cancer. Do you know that nowadays kids start using cell phones as early as the age of 5? Now guess what happens to their brains when they use cell phones at such an early age? They get 5 times as much radiation than adults do. The reason it's easier for radiation to reach a kid's brain is because a kid's skull is thinner than an adult skull, which lets a lot more radiation to the brain of a child. When radiation goes through your body, it can kill cells, and if those cells don't heal properly, they might become cancer. Today, I want to give you some tips on how to protect yourself from this radiation. One way is to keep the phone 6 inches away from your face. Use a speakerphone or a headset. Also, it would be better if you could text as often as possible so you don't have the phone close to your face. Every time you're about to call someone, and I mean every time, make sure you're not in an area with weak network signal, because when the signal is weak, your phone will work a lot harder to get a better signal, and therefore it will give out a lot more radiation. Also, never sleep with your cell phone, because when you're sleeping and the cell phone is near your head, it's going to be throwing radiation through your head all night long, and that's never good. Some people even say that when you have a cell phone close to your ear, it's like holding a mini microwave next to your face. We are still learning about the risks that cell phone radiation can cause. A lot more research still needs to be done. It's actually just like smoking. Many years ago, we never knew that it caused cancer. Till years later, researchers discovered that it did. The reality is that we live in a world full of technology. We can't escape it. It makes our lives a lot easier. But at the same time, we need to be smart about how we use it and make sure that we protect ourselves from these unnecessary risks that can harm us.
But just a little bit of question. Does heavy cell phone use hurt human health? Lindsay Davis reports on a major new study which for the first time shows cell phones do seem to have some mysterious effect on the brain.
Some are calling the study a landmark event in our understanding of how cell phones affect the human body. 47 participants had cell phones placed on their left and right ears. One cell phone was activated but muted, the other was turned off. After 50 minutes, the researchers took PET scans of the subjects. Look at what they found. The image on the left shows what happened when the cell phone was turned on. The most active areas are in red. Notice the upper right part of the brain. That's the area closest to the antenna. Compare that with this image on the right of the same subject when they had their cell phones turned off. The researchers were hoping to determine if the radiation from the cell phones had any physiological impact at all.
I confess that after the findings, I changed my behavior. So now I use it on a speakerphone. I just put a wire on my earphones.
For years, studies have tried to link cell phones and cancer, but they've been inconclusive. Experts say this new study offers perhaps the first real step in the search for an answer.
This is a study that is interesting and will almost certainly provoke additional studies.
We have a responsibility to investigate whether there are or there are not long-lasting consequences from repeated stimulation after 5 or 10 years of cell phone exposure.
CTIA, the Wireless Trade Association, told us the leading global health organizations have overwhelmingly indicated that wireless devices are not a public health risk. Still, an editorial accompanying the study said that the findings warrant further investigation.
And it sure gets your attention.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. Do you know who said that? President Ronald Reagan. Well, I am from the government. I lead a team of weapons innovators at the Air Force Research Lab, New Mexico, where I've worked for over 17 years. Prior to that, I spent 6 years on active duty, and I love our country. I married a patriot. He retired after serving 20 years on active duty, and he still works for the Air Force today. But the real reason why I do what I do is for my 2 patriotic children. That's Brad on the left and Cody on the right. And while I could talk to you all day long about why I do what I do, the real question is, why am I here at TEDx? I'm here because I need your help. You are perhaps more influential than you realize on how our military engages in conflict. Our morals, values, and ethics affect decisions made by our commanders in the field every day. I want you to be familiar with the technologies we're developing for them so that you can support them in the decisions that they have to make. I mentioned that I lead a team of weapons innovators. We make directed energy systems useful for national defense. But wait, what's directed energy? You probably recall that when I hold this pen in the air, I give it potential energy. And you can't see it, but there's an X up here. I've even got a target. When I drop it, it has kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is what weapons have used for literally hundreds of thousands of years. Spears and rocks have evolved into bullets, bombs, and ballistic and cruise missiles, but they all use that same basic kinetic technology. Directed energy harnesses energy from across the electromagnetic spectrum and focuses it into a useful beam. Lasers are directed energy systems. Lasers, like the pointer in my hand, are useful for bringing your attention to the awesome artwork behind us. I feel like someone's staring at me. Astronomers use pointers just like this one to point out constellations in the night sky. Heck, some of you probably find directed energy useful for entertaining your pets. Lasers are so cool. They are the stuff of Star Trek and Star Wars, and I'm guessing you're probably pretty comfortable with this technology. And while it's a large part of what we do at Air Force Research Lab, it's not what I work on. The team I lead develops high-power microwave weapons. Yeah. I don't mean that we're trying to figure out better ways of throwing ovens out of aircraft doors, because that's back to kinetic. We investigate different frequencies on various items. And microwaves particularly are defined as frequencies with wavelengths ranging all the way from 1 meter down to 1 millimeter. And there are different effects on different things, but today I'm going to focus on just one, and that's the counter-electronic effect. You know that microwaves are fairly good at transferring energy into water-based things, like your food, over time. What you may not realize is that in thousandths of a second, those same microwaves are extremely good at disabling, disrupting, and if conditions are right, even destroying electronic circuits. All of this in half the time it takes you to blink your eyes. That super short time span is insufficient to affect a person, but it's more than enough time to affect electronics. I'm from a lab, and we love experiments. So here's an experiment for you. Go home, put a cup of water or your leftovers from last night in your microwave for 1 second. You'll find that 1 second is insufficient time to affect that item, just as it's insufficient time to affect a person. Now, if you really don't like your cell phone, maybe you're in the market for a new microwave, turn your cell phone on and put it in your microwave for 1 second. I really do not recommend you do this, but if you did, you would probably see your cell phone reset itself. You might have to pull it out and do a hard restart on it. It is extremely likely that you will never use that phone to connect to another Wi-Fi network ever again. That's the power of microwaves against electronics. As our world has evolved, electronics have become pivotal tools, and our adversaries are just as crippled when their computers or cell phones go down as you are. When you're in an airport, your flight's been delayed, you're frantically trying to make other arrangements, and your smartphone dies. But here's why this technology is really so important. On the 3rd of October of 2015, the U.S. Air Force was tasked with disabling a command and control headquarters belonging to the Taliban over in Afghanistan. Through a series of terribly unfortunate decisions, they identified this building as that headquarters. And 3 days later, this is what it looked like. The facility was actually a Doctors Without Borders hospital. And 42 people are reported to have been injured or killed in that attack. But the team I lead is developing options. Allow me to share with you a video of a counter-electronic system in action. We call it CHAMP. And while the video you're going to see is sort of cartoonish, I assure you the system is very real. We developed it between a partnership of the Air Force Research Lab New Mexico, Sandia National Labs, Boeing, and Raytheon. And in 2012, we flew it over targets at the Utah Test and Training Range. The system worked exactly as we predicted it would. So in this video, you'll see that the Air Force has once again been tasked with disabling a command and control center, and this time we've added a chemical and biological weapons production plant, both located in a city. We choose to use a CHAMP-like weapon. You see a bomber fly in and drops off the cruise missile, which houses that high-power microwave system. The missile flies over the city and targets the command and control center, leaving it black, passes the hospital, and engages that weapons production plant. As the system flies off, the people are left to wonder, why have my communications stopped? Why did my computers stop working? How come I'm not producing my weapons? All of this without leaving a single smoking hole, without harming a single person. Stop our adversaries without harming a soul. Why aren't we using this? Well, there are a lot of challenges to adopting new technologies. I mean, let's face it, change is hard, right? Some of these systems can be kind of pricey, but we are working on ways to make them more affordable. A particular challenge for microwave weapons is, was it effective? I mean, when you leave a building in rubble, it's pretty easy to know that whatever was going on before in that building is probably not going on now. But when you do no damage, how can you tell? We're working on solutions to that too, and we will solve those problems. The problem that only you can solve is whether or not using these systems aligns with our morals, values, and ethics as a culture. Only you can decide, but I want you to know that these systems are designed to maximize damage to the way our adversaries go about harming us and minimize damage to their person. I know that the morals, values, and ethics problem is real, because in the early 2000s, my organization developed a different technology. We called it active denial, and we chose a millimeter wave frequency because we want you to feel it. That system, the signal penetrates your skin to the depth of about 3 sheets of paper thick, no deeper, and it causes you to feel hot. The intent is to get people's attention and have them stop doing whatever it is they're doing. So I've got another experiment for you. Make a pizza. When you've preheated your oven to 450 or 500 degrees, and you go to pop that sucker in, you open up your oven door, and that wave of heat comes out and hits you in the face. Instinctively, you close your eyes and turn your head, and the feeling passes. Well, you've just basically felt the active denial beam. I know, because I've been hit by it. It is uncomfortable when you are in the beam. Then sensation stops as soon as you step out. Unfortunately, we have done an insufficient job of educating the public about that technology, and misperceptions about it have so far created an environment that has discouraged our commanders from choosing to use that technology operationally. But I ask you to think about whether or not it's more aligned with our morals to shoot guns at a car that's perhaps erratically approaching an entry control point, or is it more aligned with our values to make that driver so uncomfortable that they're no longer interested in heading toward that gate? Is it more moral to us to shoot bullets at protesters on our borders who are throwing rocks at our Border Patrol agents? Or maybe would active denial be a choice that's more aligned with our values? Only you can decide. But let's not allow active denial's fate to happen with our high-power microwave counter-electronic systems. Had the commander in Afghanistan had the choice to use a high-power microwave system, and had they still mistakenly identified that hospital as their target, 3 days later, the facility would have looked like this. And I guarantee you, 42 people would not have been injured or killed. President John Kennedy said, "I look forward to a great future for America, a future in which our country matches its military strength with our moral restraint, its wealth with our wisdom, its power with our purpose." I'm from the government, and I need your help. Use your power to create for our children the future to which President Kennedy and we all aspire.
You're not going to hear it. You're not going to smell it. You're going to feel it.
It felt like opening up an oven door, almost mixed with a sting from about my sternum to my neck. So like you started really feel it on my neck before I had to kind of instinctually jump out of the way.
Go. Yeah.
It still works the same way. Yeah, it works.
Picture like an invisible searchlight, right? You know what a searchlight looks like? So an invisible searchlight of radio waves going downrange. So it's this big when it starts, and at the end, it's the same size.
This is a military area. Move away from the perimeter. I say again, this is a military area. Move away from the perimeter.
There could be some perimeter incursions along an installation that you may have. There could be some crowd control where you're trying to make sure that you de-escalate the situation and kind of calm things down and break up these crowds before it gets out of control.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna wrap this presentation up and now, but briefly before we do, I just want to point out fightingmonarch.com. This was an article I actually posted to the Reality Decoded Facebook group. Don't know what went on there. I just moved it south for some reason. You called it live. I didn't scroll or do anything. It just popped back to the top there. We're not going to read each and every single one of these, but as I said, this was an article I did post to the Reality Decoded Facebook group, which is a list for 100 patents for mind control technology. fightingmonarch.com. Remember that, patents for mind control. You can put that into a search bar if you want to look further in each and every single one of these patents. It will take you an awful long time because each and every one is thousands of words long. But this come out in May 6th of 2018. A couple of videos we're not going to click on. That's what the Gwen towers look like. You've probably seen one or two of these in your neighborhood, and they also disguise them as trees and cactus hiding in plain sight. Another video we're not going to watch, and pretty much it sort of starts out talking about most of the stuff we have already spoken about in this presentation and previous ones. But here we go to the first patent. We're not going to read them all, and we're just going to briefly scan through the first few of them just so you can kind of gauge how many there are, basically, and then decide if or not you think that they're using any or all of these technologies against you and I and the rest of the global population. You know, hearing system patent, subliminal presentation system patent. So that basically I could do that. I could record my presentations onto this technology and then subliminally implant it into your mind, so you don't have to worry about reading or remembering it at all. You could just have it implanted into your minds and you would know the knowledge already. But it was for secret agents, I guess. All of this stuff is dual purpose technology, but needs to know classified operations. They could implant the details of a mission at the very last minute, and the agent would know everything about it, and he'd probably also be inserted with some programming that once he carried out his mission he would suicide himself. But this list, as I said, is not endless. There are 100 of them, but it is incredibly long. I'm just, as I said, scrolling down casually for you just to sort of see that there is an awful lot of nefarious electromagnetic and radio frequency directed energy silent weapons for silent war technology patents. And there's one there. A guy's got what looks like something in his ears, very similar to earbuds, and then a little device on his back that can control the way he thinks. And you know, that little device on his back could quite easily be a cell phone plugged in to headphones, and that is for the brainwave inducing system, which has a US 5954629 patent number, made by some Japanese people, and sensors are provided for detecting brainwaves of a user. So once they sort of read the brainwaves of the user, oh my goodness, his brainwaves are thinking things that we don't want him to. Let's zap him with some frequencies, or let's just remove those memories altogether. Moving on, as I said, hundreds and hundreds of patents here, and there's a girl in a little bubble there. She almost looks like our little dancing anime Owl. Very similar there. Layout overlap detection and selective flattening in computer implanted integrated circuit designs. My goodness, who come up with that name? Probably a man man with an extremely small penis, I would imagine. But moving on, just to keep showing you apparatus for audibly communicating speech using the radio frequency, putting thoughts and sounds in words into your head. More pictures, diagrams. There was one of interest I did want to get down to before we do wrap this up. We'll probably finish on that one and not go too much for it, but kind of a little diagram that does kind of demonstrate exactly how your sort of TV, cable box, and Xbox and all that kind of stuff are sort of synchronized together to provide to create a bubble of frequencies for entertainment purposes, according to the patent's purpose. But dual technology is just to immerse you in a field of mind control and thought implantation frequencies. Apparatus and method of broadcasting audible sound using ultrasonic sound as a carrier. You can kind of see a house and a car being targeted by the frequencies that can then be, the car or the house will act as a conductor or receiver. Pulsative manipulation of the nervous system. That one's a little bit disturbing. If you want to look into that one on your own, do so at your own risk. Method and device for implanting radio frequencies. There is a diagram, I think, of a head and the frequencies being implanted, maybe, or the bubble that they create in which the frequency will, your head will be submerged in, which will then be subjected to the frequencies. Multifunctional radio frequency directed energy system. Goodness gracious me. Some of this you just don't even want to know exists, but unfortunately we do need to know exists because we need to determine if or not this is being used against us. Nervous system excitation device. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly. Method and system for simplifying speech waveforms. Stop us using big words. Let's simplify speech, and use things like lol, OMG, lamo instead of actual words. Stuff like that. Intraoral electronic. Where is it? I'm sure it wasn't this far down. Maybe I've already passed it, but I don't think so. I'm moving on as swiftly as I can. I could get quite sidetracked here. And there it is. That is the picture I wanted to show you. And as you can see, there's an individual that could be you or I, and there's a TV, what could be a VCR, a cable box, receiver, maybe even a video game plugged in. You can see they're all wired up together and also plugged into an AC mains. But this is the apparatus to affect brainwave entertainment over premise power line wiring. James David Honeycraft and John Honeycraft Jr. are the inventors and assignees of this pattern, and this invention discloses an apparatus and method to affect brainwave entertainment by very low frequency exclusive OR in brackets XCR modulation of a very high frequency carrier over a premise power line alternating current, AC, which every major appliance is plugged into. A microcontroller with a stored program memory space is used to store and produce waveforms that lead to brainwave entertainment by controlling a H-bridge capable of generating bipolar square waves, which output is capacitive, coupled to a permanent AC power line. So all of our technology is constantly plugged in to the power mains, and while it is the output, the output of these frequencies is permanent, trying to keep us entertained. But the microcontroller to determine whether to produce daytime or nighttime entertainment frequencies. Again, this can control our nightmares and our dreams, or what we think and behave in the day. So it knows when we're sleeping. It knows when we are awake. So you better watch out, for goodness sake. And that is the full pattern, US 8579793. Look into that yourself, but just let that little diagram sink in, that all of those things we have in our household, and all of it was technology designed to stimulate the brain, tell us how to feel, tell us how to think. With that being said, guys, we will return hopefully now to the Reality Decoded Thrift Store studio live for reaction, feedback, discussion and chat before we do end this feature presentation. Thanks for your patience, and we will hopefully hear from you very soon what you had to think on this presentation. It was brought to you by Shit Video Productions on behalf of Reality Decoded.
Reality hits you hard, bro.
Wake up to reality. Nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world. The longer you live, the more you will realize that the only things that truly exist in this reality are merely pain, suffering, and futility. Listen. Everywhere you look in this world, wherever there is light, there will always be shadows to be found as well.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Welcome back guys. I would say I hope you enjoyed that, but I doubt you did. Some very disturbing revelations contained within that presentation, and as always, make of it what you will, guys. I'm not here to tell you you have to believe it, but there is some very startling evidence to suggest that it is very, very real. And in my personal opinion, in my beliefs, the last 3 years, and probably going further back than that, but certainly let's use the last 3 years as an example for how sort of crazy the world has come. I'm pretty sure most of that can be accounted to with frequency. Can you hear me, guys? Did I turn the mic back on? Yes, I did. Just check in. But thank you, Tranquil Vortex, and it was you yourself did give me the whoa moment. I will sort of have a few little bars that I set for myself here at Reality Decoded. One is to get at least 10 people watching. At one point we had almost 18, at the lowest 6, but we do have double digits at the moment. And I also look for 50 views as my return of investment for, you know, doing all the research and all the editing and putting these presentation together for you guys to watch. And the added sort of bonus for me is the wow factor. I really, really hope that one person will give me the wow factor, and it was during that little segment there when we were looking at MK Ultra in the theta testing, I believe it was, where part of the mind control, the behavior of the alters under the mind control will start mutilating themselves, forgive me, there. And in conjunction with recent contemporary times in the trans agenda, and young teenage children or children pre-teens are mutilating their genitals. This can certainly be attributed to mind control, in my opinion. And at the end of that presentation, who was it that made it? It was Just Frank. Welcome, guys, to those of you who did join us. But Just Frank did say, if that is a VCR, digital is far more effective. Indeed it is. And that just sort of gives an example of how long ago that technology was first introduced or invented. And, you know, we even going back then, it had to be years in its concept. And when we sort of go back to the first sort of mention of frequencies, it does seem to sort of be around the sort of late 1930s, early 1940s that these were introduced to us. But during the sort of 1980s and the 1970s, sort of most households had a TV set in their living room, and sort of towards the mid to the end of the 80s, we had things like VCRs, we had cable boxes, we also had Ataris. We heard how the technology way back then, in like 40 something years ago, had the ability to differentiate between daytime and nighttime, and then it could generate different wavelengths of programming for
entertainment purposes. I don't know if you can see the cat running up the stairs in the background there, but I used to joke that Atari programmed our dreams or nightmares, and that may well have been the case. Remember the good old 80s and VHSs, we often would sort of go and rent the horror movies and sort of have a sort of double or triple bill on a Saturday night before we were sort of too young to go and drink in pubs. That would be sort of excuse me. How we entertained ourselves as teens back then. You know, we'd watch VHSs and go and buy some soda pops and chips and crisps and nuts and stuff, and sit around in whoever's house would welcome us in and sit there and watch a lot of horror movies. And I'm pretty sure some of you out there have watched horror movies in your lifetime and may have been accompanied by the nightmares that followed after watching those movies. And were those nightmares naturally of natural origin, or were they partly programmed into our mind via the technology that we sat in front while we were absorbing that while eating junk food? And you know, that was another thing that was big in the 1980s and sort of introduced, was the sort of couch potato mentality. And again, a potato, if you stick two things either side, it will create a current, and that was the case with headphones. And in many of these technologies that we saw and witnessed, they needed something to be attached either side of the head. And with regards to being able to remote control humans, that was something I wasn't a YouTuber back during the Pokemon Go craze, but my suspicions were that Pokemon Go provided plausible deniability for Nintendo for remote controlling humans to walk into the paths of things like trains or oncoming traffic or off of piers or all sorts of things, into canals, and putting themselves sort of into harm's way, because they were distracted. And also provided the beta testing to see how many people we can actually remote control. And if you guys can recall, back then during the Pokemon Go craze, it was like watching hordes of zombies all looking around, chasing their phone, occasionally looking up, and then scurrying around all over the place, following these augmented little characters, trying to capture them. But was that just the guys in the smoke screen for more sinister operations at hand? And a beta test in how to sort of remote control people and how to divide them into red team and blue team. And funny enough, the sort of COVID-19 tracking app that is built into your phone these days, you can disable it, if not that does work, is almost identical to how Pokemon Go functioned when you sort of, I saw my mum's when she sort of first come here, and it was like that. It kind of showed where people were in close proximity, and how sort of how closer contact you come to somebody that may or may not be transmitting the device. And this was sort of the same with Pokemon Go. You could tell if there were people from the red team or the blue team, or if they were chasing this character, or if they were chasing that character. And it got sort of people used to sort of interacting also with an augmented reality. But multi-purpose, multifaceted, dual-purpose technologies and agendas are the things they like the best. And that was sort of like a plague of its own, the Pokemon plague. Everybody, or almost everybody, became infected by that craze, be they young or be they old, or be they just sort of the adult guardian with their offspring that they were sort of keeping safe from harm. They too got involved and started playing it, and it sort of put everybody into a trance. And as I said, guys, if you wanted my opinion for the explanation of a lot of the behavioral patterns of humanity in the last 3 years, my prime and first answer would be it is the result of mind control. You don't have to share and agree my opinion, but hopefully this presentation and my thoughts have provided you a little bit more input towards making of it what you will. So let me go back, because there is a lot of comments going on, something I wasn't always very used to here at Reality Decoded. Tranquil Vortex mentioned entrained, not entertained. Very good play on words there. 5 and 5 for the sound. That's always good to hear. The wall wiring pattern got me good too. Oh, look at the kitty. Is she still there? No. I don't know where she's hiding. It's a little bit like kids. When I can't see or hear her, I begin to worry, and it's not that uncommon for me to go and find a little path of destruction of when she's been out of sight and out of my mind. But guys, it is getting close to 10 o'clock local time, and we are almost up to the 3-hour mark on this stream, which I will obligate myself by running to that time frame. Something about the 3-hour streams at Ship Video Productions seems to be almost organic. So if anyone has anything to mention or add to the proceedings, now would be the time. Unfortunately, I do use a different streaming app here at Reality Decoded than we do over at the Shit Show, where I co-host with my wonderful partner in crime, L78. Some of you guys may have seen one or two of our streams before, but I don't actually have the ability to open up a line to get you on and have a guest caller here, although I have sort of MacGyvered it in the past with dual devices and sort of one app in one phone and sort of holding the microphone close to the speaker so that you guys can hear along in the background. It was a great show from Brian. Well, thank you very much. It was an R.D.R.R, and I did tease a little bit for those of you who may have been here pre-presentation, which I think quite a few of you are, and it's always good to see that the majority of viewers stick around for the presentation and don't just sort of show up for the pleasantries. But I did have a little spoiler and teaser for you that there is going to be another RD live stream, and I'm not entirely sure when. I would say possibly tomorrow, depending on what happens with plans for Frequency Friday, if we bring you that or not over at the Shit Show. That is to be determined. I do check in usually on a Friday morning with my beautiful co-host and touch base and bang heads together and start the proceedings for our productions and presentations over the weekend. But it may be tomorrow, or if not, I will possibly say it will come at you on Monday evening. It is going to be a very, very long stream. It's not actually going to be a stream or a presentation that I put together, but it is something that is it was produced and designed with the purpose to be shared and copied as many times as possible, and it is about a certain September Tuesday morning, and it is actually a documentary I watched some sort of years ago that sort of was my yes, I wasn't crazy for thinking there were not any planes. So watch this place, guys. Hit the bell just in case you get notified, but I wouldn't advise it. I actually think that is just one of the sort of YouTube programmatics of getting people used to being acting on command. Hit the bell, smash the like, be sure to subscribe. Is not something that's designed necessarily to help the creators, but it helps the algorithm understand how many people respond to calls to action. Where was I going with that? I don't know. Never mind. It is a long stream. It is a little bit late. I do want to get myself a little bite to eat before taking the furry friends out for their final walk of the evening and detach and get away from some of the technology I've been surrounded by today and walk around under the canopies of the tropical jungle. It's not like the deepest, darkest jungle. It's not like Dr. Livingstone. I'm sort of living in an area that was once jungle. It has sort of been reclaimed, and they've sort of managed to sort of conserve parts of the jungle area and sort of turn them into sort of parks and pathed walkways for people to cycle on, walk, jog, run. They even put little gyms, outdoor gyms that are free to use, as well as little dog areas with seesaws and stuff for them to run up and down and in and out, those sort of things. So it's not, don't think I'm going out with a machete like Indiana Jones, but it is nice to get out under the vegetation, look at the stars, look at the moon. I don't know if I could show you the moon. This probably won't come out on the camera, but it is a beautiful clear night after we did have a bit of stormy weather earlier this afternoon and sort of for the last 3 days actually, as I believe the dawn of rainy season is upon us here. So a few thunder and lightning storms will be occurrence, but the other thing that is a little bit strange about the weather here recently was on Monday I saw a very, very rare sighting here of a chemtrail that went from one side all the way to the other. It went from south all the way to north, so once it sort of gets a mile or two north of where I'm living, it hits the Gulf of Mexico, and not far beyond that is obviously Texas, the United States, Louisiana, New Mexico, Arizona, and Florida, the panhandle there. So that plane was pretty much, I'm sure, on its way to the United States, but following its spray, and you may have seen that a little short shit show short that I uploaded on Monday of that convincing cloud. The weather has been pretty shit, and the day after I witnessed the very, very strange double rainbow, which, trust me guys, the camera did not do it justice. It looked like a huge fucking orb in the sky. Literally, it looked like a Death Star or another object, and it was a double rainbow, and during the sort of double rainbow there was also some strange lightning going on, and that's been also something that has been occurring the last few days, some sort of weird, inexplicable lightning and thunderstorms, although tropical climates and environments are somewhat different to sort of the environments that I've spent longer lengths of time living in, and I have only sort of been here coming on 2 years, so this is sort of the second time round the seasons, and I haven't sort of really developed much of a pattern of it yet. But anyway guys, let's just check the comments before I do get the Dancing Girl to play us out, as is the Shit Video Productions tradition. A Dancing Girl always plays us out to end the proceedings. Just Frank, fun and informative. Good night all, peace. Thank you for that, Frank. Thanks for joining us. The 439 subscribers is a measure, is messing my OCD. I'll make it 440. Well, thank you. I certainly appreciate that, Brian, as well as all of you that give me the 21 thumbs up. That might be a record here at the moment, and at one point we were close to 20 viewers. It touched 18 at one point, but not always the quality, or not always the quantity. The quality is always preferred, and I think we've had a very quality crowd this evening in your viewership and support to this channel and other Shit Video Productions ventures is greatly appreciated. So there is a chance you might see me back here tomorrow at Reality Decoded with a very special no plane themed stream. Hope you can join me for that. If it isn't going to be tomorrow, then it will be Monday at around 7 p.m. Maybe I'll go on at 6:11, which is as close to sort of 9:11 I can get if you twist it upside down, because it is a long one, and it might go on, you know, talking afterwards a little bit long, because that is a subject that I like to talk about, and I'm pretty sure some of you like to talk about. And as I said, it was a documentary that did answer a lot of questions for me, as well as opening my own eyes and explorations into the direction of alternative avenues from the ones that we were being told regarding a controlled demolition, as well as aircrafts being sort of switched and changed for dummy drone craft and crashed into those buildings. The planes always looked very, very weird to me in the videos we were shown, and when I watched the presentation or the documentary that hopefully I will be presenting to you either tomorrow or Monday, it was the moment of clarity that I wasn't ridiculous and I should continue looking down that rabbit hole. But since then, I did find the Ghostbusters 9/11 theory, which if you haven't watched, please go check that out, guys. It is a 9/11 theory that you've probably never heard anywhere else. Not telling you It's what happened, but there is an awful lot that ties the movies or the events of the original 84 Ghostbusters to the events of that September Tuesday morning. There we go, guys. We are nearly at the 3-hour mark, so let me get her up for you, ready to play us out. So guys, as always, the message is to take care. May the force be with us, and may we all be excellent to each other until the next time. So thank you for joining me here this evening at Reality Decoded, part of the Shit Video Productions network of channels, and we will see you real soon at another SVP channel that you hopefully are subscribed to. And as I said, guys, until that time, take care, and we'll see you real soon. Good night for now. R.D. signing out.